Tuesday marked 2 years since 1 October, the tragedy when a gunman opened fire from inside a suite at the Mandalay Bay onto the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival below. 58 people were killed, hundreds more wounded.
It is the worst shooting in modern American history, and one that both rocked our community here in Las Vegas and shaped local and national news coverage the past 2 years. So in a statement just a short time ago, MGM said this settlement is not an admission of guilt. The company said a long legal fight is not in anyone's best interest. And this morning, as you can see there on the right side of your screen, we are expecting to hear from Robert Eglet, a lead attorney for both the victims and their families. You can see our cameras positioned there, ready to hear what he has to say this morning.
Yeah, so if you can't watch it on the air, we're also going to be streaming the announcement on our Facebook page and our website. So the entire operation here is all over this story because obviously this has been going on for a couple of years and there's been talk, there's been rumors, and we're just kind of waiting to hear from the attorneys now on exactly how this is going to happen.
So Mr. Eglet's office issued a statement this morning, reading in part, today's agreement marks a milestone in the recovery process for the victims of the horrifying events of 1 October. He represents about 2,500 victims in this case, and he says that this entire process should be complete late next year, late 2020. We also know a separate attorney representing several victims in California also holding a press conference around 11 o'clock this morning, Nate.
Yeah, there's some news about this from the San Diego area in Southern California, and so we have coverage with our sister station down there and exactly what they're doing. This has been something that's been in the works for a while. There have been some rumors about it. There have been some legal actions that have taken place in the last year or so, but it's culminating, we believe, in the announcement that will take place shortly. We have that live picture that we'll be going to when Mr. Eglet steps up to the podium at the microphone at one of the law offices in downtown Las Vegas.
And MGM Resorts also issued a statement this morning, a short time ago, saying this is a major step. The chairman and CEO, Jim Murren, said in a statement that the casino giant's goal has been to resolve this lawsuit it faced over the 2017 massacre. So, quote, our community and the victims and their families can move forward in the healing process. He said the company long hoped a settlement deal would be possible, and hopefully we'll hear from that this morning. So MGM's insurers, we know this, will contribute a minimum of $735 million for a settlement fund. And then depending on how many participants come forward, MGM could contribute more, up to $800 million.
Yeah, so after the incident took place, there were all of the victims, and they had to reach out to all the victims. They put calls out for people who may or may not have been interested in participating in this lawsuit. And so it has been a very long process, and hopefully we will hear soon how this is going to end or what the next steps will be as a result of this announcement today.
And as you said, Nate, just 2 days ago, our community, the nation, coming together to mark 2 years since this tragedy. We saw events all over town to mark that event, to mark the tragedy.
Yeah, and we're looking at some of the pictures there, and we were talking about it as it was happening on Tuesday, how our community changed, how even the Vegas Golden Knights hockey team helped our community heal, and how they continue to be part of the ongoing healing with the game last night and the opening of the season. And 2 years ago, now starting the third season, we talked about the crosses that were put up by the gentleman who makes those crosses. I believe this is the third set of victim crosses that he has made just for the 1 October shooting. The original crosses are now at the Clark County Museum down in the southeast part of the valley. And they've asked folks who are involved with that, either as a family or as a friend, that if you want to make a statement, they ask you to go ahead and do so. There's a form to fill out on the Clark County Museum's website. So if you're just joining us now, we are awaiting a live news conference on a proposed settlement over the 1 October shooting with MGM and attorney Robert Eglet. So we have that live camera. We're just waiting for Mr. Eglet or a representative to step up to the microphone there.
Waiting to hear from his offices in downtown Las Vegas. As you can see, seems that will happen any moment now. He also sent out a statement this morning, and the rest of it, want to just share this. It says, while nothing will be able to bring back the lives lost or undo the horrors so many suffered on that day on 1 October, this settlement will provide fair compensation for thousands of victims and their families. MGM Resorts is a valued member of the Las Vegas community, and this settlement represents good corporate citizenship on their part. We believe that the terms of the settlement represent the best outcome for our clients and will provide the greatest good for those impacted by these events.
Right. They were talking about how a long, drawn-out legal process wouldn't benefit anyone and would just keep the the misery and the memories going and going. And so there was this ongoing effort to get to this point. And I expect that once this announcement is made, we'll hear from the attorneys and the families and get some reactions. In fact, the 8 News Now team is out trying to get some reaction from the families and the victims that we have spoken to in the past couple of years.
Orca Manna, Kristen Drummond, both on scene there waiting to get that. Again, if you are just joining us, we are waiting to hear from Robert Eglet in downtown Las Vegas, one of the attorneys representing several victims and their families of 1 October. He represents, the office represents about 2,500 victims alone. And again, that long process, he says, should be complete by late next year. So this today will be a huge development. Again, a settlement about $735 million.
And I believe we were even talking about upwards of possibly $800 million, and we're awaiting the details. And again, if that announcement is made today, it will not be the end of it. As you said, it's going to take upwards of a year to get it all worked out because there are so many people affected by this, and a lot of them are in Southern California. As I mentioned, there's a separate attorney with representing separate families. Is that right?
Right. And that will be live streamed from San Diego this morning at 11 o'clock. So several developments this morning. But in the meantime, we are looking at some video from just 2 days ago, from Tuesday, when we remembered 2 years since 1 October, all the crosses at the Welcome to Las Vegas sign. We saw people from all over the country here paying their respects and showing support for both the victims' families, the victims, and all the survivors.
Well, and everyone in our entire community has the story of their own personal situation. Where were they when they found out? How did it affect them? Did you know one? Even if you didn't know any of the people, it's affected our entire community. And the entire 8 News Now team, we obviously were as involved as we could be when it was happening. And each anniversary, with the ceremony that took place at the Clark County Government Center Amphitheater with Governor Sisolak and the sheriff, it's a big deal for our community. So we're kind of waiting now for the attorneys to step up to the microphone. I'm guessing this is going to be in coordination with a whole lot of folks to put this together. And it didn't just happen. It's been in the works for weeks, if not months. There's been some legal action. There was talk of, is it even possible to get to this point with all of the people involved? And the MGM obviously having to make big decisions on its part as well. They had the statement from Mirren today, right?
Yes, and it said in part so our community and the victims and their families can move forward in the healing process. Their goal has been to resolve these lawsuits that started back in 2017. So now here we are 2 years later, hoping to find some sort of resolution. MGM Resorts calling this a major step this morning as we wait to hear from them. But yes, it did impact our community. And a lot of people since then have moved here to Las Vegas, many from California, and people from all over the country have some sort of direct tie to that tragedy. You know someone who was there, maybe several people who were there. So it has been a learning process. It's been a difficult process. And it's something that has changed the dialogue of our country as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that popped up almost just within a couple of days of the incident was the healing garden that you see there. And that too has evolved over time. At first, it was literally almost like a makeshift okay, we understand that Mr. Eglet is about to step up to the microphone of a downtown Las Vegas law office to announce what will be one of the biggest lawsuits.
You guys are on speakerphone. Good morning.
All right, let's go ahead and listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on such short notice today. I'm going to read a statement to you. I have my co-counsel, co-lead counsel in this case on the phone, Mark Robinson of the Robinson Calcagney firm out of Newport Beach, and Kevin Boyle from the Panache Boyle firm out of Los Angeles. They have been the heart and soul of the leadership committee for the plaintiffs for a year and a half now, and they have worked tirelessly on this case. And in my 32 years of practice, I can tell you that these are the most outstanding lawyers I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Earlier this morning, we, as well as MGM, released a news release that MGM Resorts and counsel representing substantially all plaintiffs in litigation involving the October 1 shooting are announcing that we reached a settlement agreement to resolve pending lawsuits and claims against MGM Resorts regarding the events of October 1. The settlement agreement is comprehensive and includes all parties named in the lawsuits involving MGM. This is a complex situation, and we wanted to take the time to provide you all with additional context and ensure that those joining us have the opportunity to ask questions today. Starting with the terms of the settlement, the total settlement amount is expected to be approximately $735 to $800 million. Now, as stated, and this needs to be made clear, MGM Resorts has insurance coverage for $751 million for this case. The range depends on the number of claimants that choose to participate in the settlement, and we expect, quite frankly, that all claimants, represented claimants, will choose to participate. This agreement with the Plaintiffs' Counsel is a major step in it represents the resolution of the previously disclosed mediation efforts. This settlement is something that MGM and we hoped to accomplish for quite some time. MGM believes and has believed from the beginning, and we agree, that prolonged litigation around these matters is in no one's best interest, and it is our sincere hope that this agreement means that this scenario will be avoided. MGM's stated goal from the outset of this litigation was to resolve these matters so that the community, the victims, and their families can move forward in the healing process. And today's announcement is a step forward in this direction and proof, in my mind, that MGM meant what they said at the outset of this litigation, that their desire was to resolve this thing globally. We in MGM truly believe that this settlement will provide fair compensation for thousands of victims and their families. This has been a long process, but we at MGM believe that this conclusion is best for our community, the company, and the victims. Under the settlement agreement, all parties will dismiss and release all pending litigation against MGM Resorts. With regard to next steps, an independent claims administrator or administrators will be appointed by the court shortly to create procedures for allocating a settlement fund among the participating claimants, which MGM Resorts will fund with a minimum of $735 million through its insurance companies. I would like to make clear that this settlement is not an admission of liability by MGM by any stretch of the imagination. There were strong arguments on both sides of this case, and MGM had very good defenses in this case. It was a difficult case, there's no doubt about it. And while nothing will be able to bring back the lives lost or undo the horrors so many suffered on that day, this settlement will provide fair compensation for thousands of victims and their family. Having the privilege of representing 24 or 2,500 approximately of the 4,400 victims, this situation has had profound effects on me personally. The stories that all of you, I'm sure, have heard about what happened that night and the impacts on these people is horrific. But this is a step in the right direction to try to put that behind us for our community and these victims. We do share the belief that the terms of this settlement represent the best outcome for our clients and will provide the greatest good for those impacted by these events. I would like to say a few words about MGM. I have been practicing law now for 32 years. And I was thinking last night that I know I have sued at least hundreds and probably over 1,000 companies and corporations during my career for various different negligence or product liability cases. In that time frame, this is the first time that I've ever had the ability and the desire to say something good about the defendant in this case. I want to tell you that in my view, What MGM has done here through this process and through this mediation represents the highest standard of corporate citizenship I have ever seen in my career. They are, quite frankly, a shining example of what corporations can do in America, in that they can both do well for their shareholders as well as do well for the community. And MGM has proved that in this case. In my view, they have set the bar for corporate citizenship around the country. And as a lifelong Nevadan, I cannot tell you how proud I am that MGM is a Nevada company here in Nevada. We all know that they are the largest employer in our state. But what they have proved here, and they've proved many times before, is that they are an important member of our community, and they genuinely care about Las Vegas and Nevada as a whole. And what they have done here through this settlement is quite frankly, astonishing in my view. You just don't see normally this type of corporate behavior in America very often. As I said, I have my co-lead counsel on the phone. Mark Robinson, who's going to be joining us today, is tied up in court. His partner and son, Dan Robinson, is on the phone, along with Kevin Boyle from the Paniche Boyle firm. And I'd like to turn it over to them for a few remarks. I will come back and make some closing statements, and then we will open it up for questions for all of you. Dan, you want to go ahead?
Sure. First, thanks for the kind words, Robert. This has obviously been a case that's played a very, very important role for everything that we are trying to accomplish for these victims who we've got to know, many on a first name basis. These folks have their lives tragically upended by the 1 October shooting, and we hope and pray that this settlement is a step in the right direction of enabling them to get some compensation that will achieve some sense of peace and closure going forward. It's been an honor and privilege to represent these clients. Our firm represents about a third of the clients in the 1 October settlement agreement. It is a product of a very long, hard-fought litigation and negotiation upon which we reach this, we believe, is a tremendous settlement. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Kevin?
Yes, Robert. Also, thanks for the kind words. This is Kevin Boyle of the Paniche and Boyle Law Firm in Los Angeles. I want to reiterate that it has been an honor to represent these victims who went through this horrific tragedy. I believe that this is the first time in history that a company has stepped up and paid the victims of a mass shooting. As we all know, there is a mass shooting epidemic in this country, and we believe that this settlement not only will help compensate the victims of the Route 91 festival, we think it can drive real change in making some common sense laws in this country that can prevent future mass shootings. And that is the greatest achievement, hopefully, because once corporate America realizes it needs to step up and accept financial responsibility, those powerful companies can put pressure on the government to make real change in this country. So it's been an honor, and thank you all very much, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin. Before I open it up for questions, I just want to make a few more comments, and I would be remiss if I didn't speak about MGM's employees and the broader Las Vegas community here. As MGM's CEO, Jim Murin, has said on multiple occasions, MGM has the best employees in the business, surrounded by one of the best communities in the world, Las Vegas. While the past 2 years have been challenging, MGM's employees' support of each other and the broader community has been inspiring. The trust, loyalty, and dedication that MGM's valued employees have shown to their great company has allowed them to unite and do what is right as they move forward. And we and the MGM hope this agreement will allow the victims, first responders, and the entire community to look forward to the future and continue on a path forward toward healing. I do want to point out that we did work tirelessly since early February of this year. This mediation went on for just short of 8 months. Jim Murin and John McManus, their general counsel, and the MGM's team and their lawyers were exceptional. They were professional throughout this entire process, and I cannot say enough good things about them. I really can't, and that is an unusual position for me to be in, but I cherish it today because it's all true. So again, I want to commend MGM, and I want to say to you that I'm not just saying this because this case settled and they've agreed to settle this case. I'm saying this because of the way they were throughout this mediation. It became very clear to me within just a few weeks of starting this mediation that MGM's desire was to help our community and help these victims. And I'm very proud of what they've done here today. This time we'll open it up to questions.
Mr. Eglet, I'm shocked by your turnaround on MGM. This is a company that sued the victims, tried to avoid liability by having it declared a terrorist attack. What happened between, how do you account for their behavior up until you began mediation?
Well, first of all, every defendant has a right to defend themselves. The Safety Act has never been tested under these circumstances. MGM had the right, certainly, to do that, to see if it would apply. I stand by the fact that, every defendant has. However, you are right. Look, last year, I was the loudest voice in the country, and probably Mark Robinson was the second loudest voice in the country saying negative things about MGM when they sued a number of the victims in this case. And MGM at that time, you'll recall, kept saying to the press, we just want to figure out a way to get all these cases in one venue so we can work toward resolution of the litigation. And I didn't believe them. I said, I don't believe that's true. And I said that in press conference, but I was wrong. I was wrong. And they proved that to me in the first several weeks of this mediation. It became very clear that that was their intention. Now, we didn't agree on the procedural methods they were going about, and that's why the mediation was so successful, because we were able to agree on the right, I think, the best procedure to get this case resolved. But after going through 8 months of this mediation with MGM, I do not doubt their good intentions at this time.
You had also said that they were aware of the risks. You alleged in your pleadings that they were aware of the risks and that they obviously insured against it. Do you have any feeling or any reason to believe that they have mitigated against those risks now?
I do.
Why?
Well, I'll let the MGM talk to you about that.
I wish they would.
Well, and I think they will eventually, but I think, yes, and I will tell you, they have made me the most loyal customer they'll ever have. If I have family and friends, family or friends in town, I'm putting them up at an MGM property every time now, because they have, to me, shown the most outstanding corporate citizenship I have ever witnessed, and I think all of us in this case have ever witnessed in our careers. Yes.
Mr. Eglet, there have been a number of lawsuits regarding this. Does this settle everything? Just give me a sense of the legal universe we're looking at here. Is this it now?
Yes, and so that's the short answer. There was a number of lawsuits, you'll recall, filed very early, shortly after the incident. And there was lawsuits filed here as well as in Los Angeles. My leadership team and I, who were on the phone, we organized all the plaintiffs' lawyers, which I think is about 65 plus firms that are under our umbrella working with us in this case. Starting in January 2018, we started meeting here as well as in Los Angeles once a month with everyone. We coordinated our efforts. We dismissed all of those cases. Now there's some still, I think, 3 pending cases in federal court in California that were filed that they were in a procedural posture where they couldn't be dismissed at that point. But the only lawsuit actually filed here in Nevada that's existing was the Shepard case, which after we coordinated our efforts, we filed that amended complaint in May or June of 2018. Then the litigation started, motion practice for several months, and then it was not long after that, about a year ago, that MGM approached us and suggested that we try to enter into a mediation process, which we did. It took some time to set up. I would also like to say that, speaking of the mediation process, the 2 mediators that mediated this case between the parties was retired Judge Jennifer Tagliati here in Las Vegas and retired Judge Lou Messinger out of California. They did an absolutely exceptional job. This was an incredibly complex situation involving roughly 4,400 victims, all with varying types of injuries or deaths. And we were trying to resolve this case, before the 2-year statute of limitations ran. And by their guidance and their hands, they were able to manage the parties through this process, and I commend them as well.
Can you talk about the communication process with those?
That's attorney Robert Eglet. You've been watching live coverage of the announcement of a settlement between MGM and 1 October victims and their families. I'm Nathan Tannenbaum.
I'm Alex Backus. That settlement will be between $735 and $800 million, depending on how many participants come forward. It has been a long time coming, and MGM Resorts said this morning they wanted this to be resolved.
And that was their intent all along. Now, we'll have continuing coverage throughout the day on our website as well as on our social media. In the meantime, we will be getting back to our regular programming here on 8 News Now. But for continuing coverage, watch the streams, watch the social media.